Assalamu alaikum. This is Amna from Parvaz-e-Takhayul. It's a beautiful weather here in Islamabad, and today we're going to talk about something that a lot of people feel that they know, but perhaps not in its entirety. So today we have with us Mehraavar and Saad, and we will be talking about what is empathy. Is it a feeling, an emotion, a state of mind, a state of heart? And how is empathy different from compassion, kindness? And a lot of people use these terms interchangeably. And moreover, we would also like to talk about that why people feel that during COVID-19 there's a greater need to practice empathy. And does having too much empathy take an emotional toll on you? So let's start off with you, Mehraavar. How do you understand empathy? Like, iski koi visible form hai, ya it's just like a vague concept that we read in books?
अस्सलाम वालेकुम एवरीवन. पहला रोजा मुबारक हो जिसका है और जिसका नहीं है उनको भी मुबारक हो. Empathy. I think हर 10 साल बाद जो buzzwords होते हैं वो change होते रहते हैं. They were different in the 80s, different in the 90s, different 10 years back, and they're very different now. So एक time था that the words that were the buzzwords were this person is very creative, very cutthroat, very ambitious. और अब जो words ज़्यादा important हो गए हैं that this person has a lot of empathy, this person is kind, this person is good to others, is good to animals, this person is very conscientious. So what I understand when it comes to empathy is your ability to sense somebody else's pain. And there are different kinds of empathy. We'll talk about that, but being able to connect with somebody else's suffering and being able to, in simple words, put yourself in their shoes is what is known as empathy.
Saad, what do you think, according to you, what is empathy? आप empathy को किस तरह देखते हैं अपनी daily life के अंदर, professional life के अंदर?
So the when you're on the hi everyone though, I can't hear you well all of a sudden, but hi everyone, whoever is watching, and hope everyone's keeping safe. Just to come back to your question there, Amna, I think when we talk about empathy, we also talk about understanding what others are going through, and just not understanding what they might be going through, but to really grasp what their conundrums are, what their problems are, and how can we be better there for them. मुझे भी लगता है the word often is used in terms interchangeably with sympathy as well, because there's a clear distinguishing factors that should be taken in place. कहीं ना कहीं I think empathy कुछ events की cause भी बन जाती है. A lot of times we sense that we are feeling empathetic towards someone, but we really aren't unless something very similar happens to us and we go through that. And that is where we get the grasp of what the other person is feeling. मुझे लगता है, especially in times of coronavirus, we've started to sense that we all share a very common denominator, which is of isolation, which is of pain, which is of struggle, which is of innumerable deaths around us. And there's a sense of scare. I think in times of this virus, I think that's accentuated the empathy factor. And I completely agree with Mehraavar when she said empathy ki definitions keep changing, keep evolving. Today's empathy is completely different from someone sitting in a cafe talking about someone's issues and feeling empathetic towards them. So I think for me, empathy somehow is when you find yourself on a common denominator with the other person and you realize what they're going through.
Okay, so what did you think? How do you find that common denominator? Okay,
I think
it's easy to say कि हाँ अपने आप को दूसरे के shoes में डालो and try to see their reality, but how do we actually do that?
That's the thing. I think it's very experiential. It is something that you have to experience, not entirely, partly, for you to really grasp hold of it, for you to really understand the composition of someone else's feelings. You need to hear the lyrics yourself. So I think it's more like a music. When you've heard it, I've heard it, we both understand how the lyrics, how the composition has worked.
Well,
I
that's
think
very
pain
poetic.
is very similar to that. But I think the pain is somewhat like that. It is where we both have to somehow, whatever, maybe subjectively experience it, different kinds, to really kind of start understanding. Okay, empathy, because empathy, when we use the word, feeling empathy, I think it's also like there's a particular onus on someone who also claims to feel empathetic, that do they really do. So there's a lot of introspection that goes in before you can stem out the what empathy for you really is. So I think that's something in the middle of there, us chasm mein kuch somewhere there.
I'm going to come back to you on that, Saad. But Mehraavar, I want to touch upon the fact that you mentioned that there are different forms of empathy. और उसके बाद I'll come back to what Saad was saying. Different forms क्या है? क्या empathy itself, like, is it easy to understand? How do you see the different forms of empathy?
Okay, so before we talk about empathy, I would like to talk about intelligence.
Okay.
Because when we were, I don't know about you guys, but when I was a child, एक ही किस्म की intelligence मानी जाती थी. Your ability to read, your ability to write, your ability to comprehend things as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
But as I grew up, I realized that there are different kinds of intelligence. I obviously studied, that's why I realized. But so there is spatial intelligence, जो कि आर्किटेक्ट्स के पास बहुत ज्यादा होती है, या जिन लोग का ड्राइवर्स के पास बहुत ज्यादा स्पेशल इंटेलिजेंस होती है, टू हैव एन अवेयरनेस ऑफ योर सराउंडिंग. देन देयर इज इंटरपर्सनल, जो सोशल वर्कर्स में और टीचर्स में ज्यादा होती है. देन देयर इज मैथमेटिकल इंटेलिजेंस, जो कि साइंटिस्ट्स के पास होती है और मैथमेटिशियंस के पास होती है, इंजीनियर के पास बहुत ज्यादा होती है. तो डिपेंडिंग ऑन द काइंड ऑफ इंटेलिजेंस यू हैव, आपका जो एम्पैथी का एक्सप्रेशन है वो चेंज हो जाता है. एक मैथमेटिशियन अपनी एम्पैथी को जिस तरह एक्सप्रेस करेगा, उस तरह एक स्पेशल इंटेलिजेंस वाला बंदा शायद नहीं करे, उससे थोड़ा डिफरेंट तरीके से करे. सो द काइंड ऑफ एम्पैथी यू हैव इज डिपेंडेंट ऑन मेनी फैक्टर्स. उसमें एक आ जाता है कि आपकी अपनी इंटेलिजेंस टाइप क्या है. दूसरी चीज ये आ जाती है कि आपकी अपब्रिंगिंग कैसी रही है. समबडी लॉट ऑफ एम्पैथी, अगर उनको बचपन से एक्सेप्ट किया गया है, उनके डिफरेंस को सेलिब्रेट किया गया है, तो उनका एक्सप्रेशन बिल्कुल कुछ और होगा. एंड समबडी हु सफर्ड अ लॉट ऑफ ट्रॉमा एंड पेन, उनका एक्सप्रेशन बिल्कुल अलग होगा. Now that I've said this, I would like to talk about the types of empathy. So there are different types of empathy, but जो 5 सबसे ज्यादा stand out करती है, उसके अंदर होती है सबसे पहले जो बहुत डार्क भी हो सकती है, बाय द वे, इज कॉग्निटिव एम्पैथी. मतलब कि आप दूसरे से पूरी तरह इमोशनली कनेक्ट किए बगैर उनके पैटर्न्स और उनकी रिदम्स को समझ सकते हैं. यू कैन पुट योरसेल्फ इन देयर शूज बाय अंडरस्टैंडिंग देयर बिहेवियर. सो दैट इज कॉग्निटिव एम्पैथी, जो कि बहुत सारे कल्ट्स यूज करते हैं. एक कल्ट फिगर आउट करता है कि एक इंसान के वीक स्पॉट्स क्या है, उसकी इनसिक्योरिटीज क्या है, एंड देन दे. सो कॉग्निटिव इज नॉट नेसेसरली बैड, बट इट कैन बी वेरी डेंजरस. देन जो सबसे ज्यादा लोग डिस्प्ले करते हैं एम्पैथी, दैट इज इमोशनल एम्पैथी. कि अगर आप दूसरे के डिस्ट्रेस को फील कर सकते हैं, आप दूसरे के पेन को फील कर सकते हैं. इमोशनल एम्पैथी के फायदे भी हैं, नुकसान भी हैं. इमोशनल एम्पैथी में नुकसान नहीं होता है. जस्ट इमेजिन, अगर आप एक थेरेपिस्ट के पास गए और आप रो रहे हैं और आपका थेरेपिस्ट भी आपके साथ रो रहा है, सो दैट्स नॉट वेरी हेल्पफुल. If your therapist is a bit teary-eyed, that's another thing. But if your therapist is bawling his eyes out or her eyes out, बहुत different होता है. तो emotional empathy is to be practiced जैसे हांडी में नमक डलता है, उस हिसाब से. Too much of it can be very harmful, not just to the person जिसकी तरफ आप एम्पैथाइज कर रहे हैं, बट आपकी अपने तरफ भी. क्योंकि जिसकी तरफ आप एम्पैथाइज कर रहे हैं, अगर आप उससे कहते हैं आई नो एग्जैक्टली हाउ यू फील, तो कहीं ना कहीं आप उसके एक्सपीरियंस की यूनिकनेस उससे छीन रहे हैं. और इसके ऊपर काफी ज्यादा जोक्स भी बनते हैं कि एक इंसान है, वो कहीं उसका एक्सीडेंट हो गया है और उसके दोस्त को उंगली पे रेजर लग गया एंड ही इज लाइक आई एम इन सो मच पेन टू आई नो एग्जैक्टली हाउ यू फील सो वो जो एक्सपीरियंस की यूनिकनेस होती है या उसकी इंटेंसिटी होती है वो इफेक्ट होती है देन देयर इज जो सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट है एम्पैथी की टाइप दैट इज कंपैशनेट एम्पैथी क्योंकि कंपैशन का मतलब है कि किसी के दुख के तरफ या किसी के दर्द की तरफ ना सिर्फ हमदर्दी रखना बट उसकी तरफ कोई सॉलिड एक्शन भी लेना there are different words जो कि डिग्रीज को डिफाइन करते हैं I'll talk about them but before that I'll talk about the last two types of empathy जो सबसे ज्यादा कॉमन है but ये जो आखिरी दो है ये कम कॉमन है कंपैरेटिवली और इनमें से एक बहुत पेनफुल है समथिंग दैट आई पर्सनली एक्सपीरियंस और उसकी मैनेजमेंट बहुत जरूरी है इनफैक्ट जो भी सुन रहे हैं मैं उनसे कहना चाहूंगी कि अगर आप ये एक्सपीरियंस करते हैं जिसकी मैं बात करने वाली हूँ एम्पैथी टाइप की यू नीड things to protect your system, to protect your immunity, and that is called the somatic empathy. Somatic empathy is not just understanding somebody's pain or feeling somebody's pain, but actually experiencing that pain in your body. Actually going through the experience of pain and not just understanding of it. Somatic के अंदर काफी प्रॉब्लम्स होते हैं आपको हेल्थ इश्यूज बहुत ज्यादा होते हैं eventually if you don't know how to protect yourself from somebody else's energy or somebody else's distress and you don't know how to maintain a healthy distance while showing up for them if you don't know how to do these things then eventually people are more prone to panic attacks to anxiety attacks physically आपकी health पे टोल ले लेता है काफी लोगों को बाहर जाने में मसला होता है something that I have experienced in my life on and off कि जब मैं बहुत ज्यादा लोगों की प्रॉब्लम से ओवरवेल्म हो जाती हूँ तो फिर मुझे घर से निकलने में परेशानी होती है and so anyone who goes through anxiety and who experiences these things I would like to very much do another session with you. And the last kind of empathy is spiritual empathy, which is the healthiest kind besides compassionate empathy. Spiritual empathy is when you are able to connect with somebody's higher power or somebody's more evolved state and you understand that the way you figured your way out, you don't have to ask them to stand back and you know fight their battle you can trust that they can fight their battle and all you can do is stand by their side and support them क्योंकि empathy का एक जो नुकसान होता है emotional empathy का उसके अंदर ये होता है कि I know exactly how you feel so I know exactly what you need to do और इस चीज के अंदर इंसान भूल जाता है कि दूसरे का प्रोसेस जो है ना अपनी प्रॉब्लम से डील करने का अगर उसकी प्रॉब्लम आपसे सिमिलर भी है वो बहुत डिफरेंट हो सकता है उसको शायद डिफरेंट टाइम चाहिए होगा या डिफरेंट टेक्निक्स एंड टूल्स चाहिए होंगे सो या दोज आर द टाइप्स ऑफ एम्पैथी
अच्छा very interestingly both you and Saad talk
but
sorry Mehraavar, I lost you there for a minute.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yeah. So I'm just saying, interestingly, both you and Saad mentioned experiencing pain. And I was just wondering, and Saad, I'll start with you, okay, why would someone willingly put themselves through that pain? Isn't it easy कि हम लोग empathy को practice ना करें and keep that emotional distance? Because pain is not something pleasant. Pain is not something that we desire to have. And both you and Mehraavar are talking about, you know, how it's important to sense the other person's pain. And obviously, Mehraavar talked about different forms and आप उसको कैसे reciprocate कर सकते हो, आप उसको कैसे address कर सकते हो. But like from a very layman point of view, layman perspective, क्यों हम किसी की pain को experience करें? Why would we put ourselves through that?
I remember saying you need to distinguish between feeling sympathy for someone and having empathy for someone, right? So what I was trying to say was that the experiences common hote doesn't mean that you've chosen to experience what the other one has. You've experienced all different kind of struggle or pain or whatever the circumstances have brought to you.
Yeah.
Now, since that's come to you, like a Murphy's Law, what was supposed to go wrong has gone wrong. And you found yourself in isolation. You found yourself, your life upended. You found all your goals or plans just in complete disarray. And all of a sudden you realize the fallibilities of being a human. All of a sudden you just realize what the grand idea is about, or we're very cognizant of plans ahead and this and that, and all of a sudden everything's come crumbling down. Now what do, right? And you've experienced that. You experience that journey, whatever that journey might be. It doesn't need to have a pleasant end or a happy end, whatever that might be. You've just understood in a fraction of time or seconds or months that how everything can go wrong. Similarly, now you can realize the person you're looking at, who you're not supposed to feel their pain, also chose not to be in that circumstance or in that position. And it was just brought to them by fate or whatever that you may like to call it. That is, I think, where you can build that idea of comforting not just yourself, because you need to remember empathy is also, I also feel like partially empathy is selfish. While you're understanding someone else's pain, you're also mitigating your own. It's like you're also comforting yourself through someone else's pain, understanding, yes, they're the two similar people or 10 people who are going through similar experiences. I think that is also in history has propelled causes to go forward. I mean, causes like feminism, activism, Black rights movement is very similar to our, I think the conversation will digress, but the violence done against Black men back in the day was 4 people were being abused by police officers. And then what happened is, all of a sudden you realize all the communities together, because they realize what's the common thing about them, not the violence, but the color of their skin. So somewhere around those tangents, we keep finding ourselves in others, and that is how I think it becomes a interchangeable thing.
So a common thread हमें मिल जाता है. Like if we practice empathy, what I'm hearing is that we get to find that common thread, and a lot of people feel like a human experience should be a shared experience, right? Because that is part of being human. So coming to you, Mehraavar, पेन की जो आप बात कर रहे थे, एंड सेम क्वेश्चन आई एम गोइंग टू पुट इट टू यू, कि विलिंगली क्यों हम किसी को एक्सपीरियंस, हम किसी के पेन एक्सपीरियंस करना चाहेंगे, बिकॉज दैट डज affect us negatively, and that's not something that's very pleasant. So isn't it like, let me put it into a context, COVID-19 say everyone has been affected differently, right? For a lot of people it has been easier to go internal, and for a lot of people it has been easier to go external, like to reach out to other people and see कि और किसको problem हो रही है, किसको help की ज़रूरत है. But for a lot of people it has been far more productive, it has been far more easier to just go intern and see कि अच्छा उनके mess ups क्या हैं, वो अपने आप को कैसे जो है sort out कर सकते हो. So how would you address that?
Okay. First thing, आप डिसाइड नहीं करते हो कि आपकी किस किस्म की इंटेलिजेंस होगी. हाँ, आपकी नर्चरिंग पे डिपेंड करता है कि आपकी टाइप की इंटेलिजेंस को, मतलब अगर एक मैथमेटिशियन है, एक ऐसा बच्चा है जो कि मैथ की तरफ एबिलिटी रखता है, और आपने उसको गाड़ियां सही करने में लगा दिया है, तो वो शायद अपना फुल क्या या अपना हाफ पोटेंशियल भी रीच नहीं कर पाए. लेकिन जिस तरह आप चूज नहीं करते हो कि आपकी इंटेलिजेंस का एक्सप्रेशन कैसा होगा, मुझे नहीं लगता कि हर इंसान चूज करता है कि वो एम्पैथी रखेगा. आई मीन, आई नो पीपल पर्सनली जो कहते हैं कि काश ये नहीं होती हमारे पास ये एबिलिटी दूसरों के पेन को फील करने की और सेंस करने की, काश हमें इसके थ्रू नहीं जाना पड़ता. सो व्हाई वुड समबडी विलिंगली सफर? उसका आंसर है दैट नॉट एवरीबडी विलिंगली सफर्स थ्रू अदर्स पेन. आप एक रूम में आते हैं और आपको बहुत सारे कलर्स नजर आ रहे हैं. व्हाट इफ किसी को एक एक्स्ट्रा कलर नजर आ रहा है, चूज तो नहीं कर रहा ना, वो एक्स्ट्रा कलर देखता हूँ, वो उस एबिलिटी के साथ बैठा हुआ है कि उसको नजर आ रहा है. बट हैविंग दैट सेड, आप अपनी एम्पैथी को एक्सरसाइज भी कर सकते हैं, लाइक अ मसल. अगर कुछ लोगों के एम्पैथी कम है, तो देयर आर सर्टेन टेक्निक्स, देयर आर सर्टेन एक्सरसाइजेस दैट यू कैन डू टू to exercise that. But coming back to your question again, कि आप किसी के pain के through क्यों जाएं? तो pain तो उतना ही डेफिनेट है जितना जॉय है. मे बी उतना मतलब जॉय ज्यादा फ्लीटिंग होता है, लेकिन पेन तो होना ही है. अगर आप दूसरे का पेन एक्सपीरियंस नहीं कर रहे तो अपना तो कर रहे हैं. लेकिन दैट कनेक्शन इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, बिकॉज व्हेन यू मेक दैट कनेक्शन, व्हेन यू सी समबडी else's pain and you allow them to see yours, so in a way you are telling them it's okay to be vulnerable. You know, it's okay to hurt. It's the human condition. This is not what is making you weird or a freak. हम हर वक्त रोशनी में खड़ा होना चाहते हैं. हम हर वक्त चाहते हैं that people see us for how smart we are, or how good looking we are, or how accomplished we are. But उन areas में ये जब हम दिखा रहे होते हैं, जब हम दूसरों के सामने स्टैंड आउट करने की कोशिश कर रहे होते हैं, तो हम नेसेसरली ग्रो नहीं कर रहे होते हैं. ग्रो हम उन्हीं डार्क अपने जात के डार्क पहलुओं के थ्रू कर रहे होते हैं जिनको हम एक्सेप्ट नहीं करना चाहते. मतलब यू ट्राई वेरी हार्ड to study and to gain knowledge if you feel you don't have enough. If you feel like I have dyslexia, a very mild form, but I do have dyslexia, and this feeling that I'm not intelligent, that I'm not smart, is the thing that has given me fuel to study so much or to read so much. So allowing to yourself to experience somebody else's pain is also allowing the human condition, which is not just standing in light, but also accepting our darkness and loving others, not cutting that darkness out, but accepting that darkness in them as well.
अब very interestingly, आपने connection जोड़ा है intelligence का with empathy के साथ, right? But I also feel like, and both of you can address that and share your point of view. I also feel like environment बहुत matter करता है. Like the other day, Saad and I were talking about the fact कि अब COVID-19 के अंदर लोग कह रहे हैं ना कि नहीं, all of us are in this together. No, all of us are not in this together. Because जो गरीब तबका है जो कि ऑलरेडी दबा हुआ था, और people who already had, गुर्बत तो चलो एक फॉर्म है ना आपके environment के अंदर. Then a lot of other people, for example, who are facing mental health issues, उनके लिए this situation is very different. A lot of people, let's suppose, who are, physical disability है, उनके लिए yet again corona का challenge बहुत different होगा उस लिहाज से. So don't you think other than intelligence, आप environment में कहाँ पे lie कर रहे हैं in terms of different variables that also impacts how you exercise empathy? So for example, जिस इंसान को अभी daily खाना भी नहीं मिल रहा, why should that person be concerned about other people out there who are facing difficult time? And like that's a question to both of you, whoever wants to address that first.
Saad, do you want to address that first?
Well, that's now an interesting thing, right? Because yes, I think on the spectrum, if you look at the pain, so everyone is experiencing different sorts. Yes, the shared experiences will not be there because we do live in a world where there are hierarchies, where there is stratification. So to assume कि एक गरीब बंदा के साथ आप empathize कर सकते हो, perhaps for what his conundrums are right now, perhaps not. And but I still feel that somehow, no matter where you are, whoever you are, it is still affecting you. Maybe 5% of that, as compared to someone who is experiencing it by and large. But you can see that it's creeping inside your fortified world. So it is busting the bubble. It is giving you this idea that the falsehood of wherever you are, whoever you are, there's always a foundation. Whether वो गरीब बंदे के ऊपर की foundation में जहाँ पे आप खड़े हैं, या whatever money that's built on that, it's going to be tested, and if it crumbles, you too will fall. So I think for those who, if with those this resonates, जो लोग understand कर सकते हैं कि see, we're not infallible. This will come to our homes as well. I think they can become better people after this. It might be a call to be awakened to become better. It might be a call to reevaluate yourself. So not necessarily कि experiences एक जैसे हैं, but the call has gone out to every human out there. So I think that's, those who will attend or not, that's I leave it to people. But I think that's what I feel.
What's your take on that, Mehraavar?
Okay, so like I have this notebook.
Okay.
So when I feel when people say we're in this together, so we all are in this together somewhere over here. Someone's here, someone's here, but इस चीज के अंदर हम एक साथ हैं. But to say ये एक लाइन है और हम सब इस लाइन के इस तरफ खड़े हुए हैं और हम सब एक ही लेवल पर हैं, ये बहुत ज्यादा कॉन्डिसेंडिंग है. और इसके ऊपर फिर बहुत ज्यादा मीम्स भी बने, बहुत ज्यादा मजाक भी उड़ा. जो सेलिब्रिटीज मैंशंस में बैठे हुए हैं, दे आर लाइक आई नो एग्जैक्टली हाउ यू फील. और मतलब मारिया बी के मीम्स ने तो इंटरनेट यू नो वो जितनी प्रिविलेज से बात कर रहे हैं, तो एक गरीब बंदा जिसके घर में 6 लोग हैं और वो 20-30 हजार ही कमा के ला रहा है, तो उसको तो वो सुनता आएगा ना. मतलब वो ही किसी के एक्सपीरियंस की यूनिकनेस ले लेना, ये कह के कि आई नो एग्जैक्टली हाउ यू फील एंड एग्जैक्टली इन द सेम स्पॉट सफरिंग थ्रू द सेम थिंग. नो, वी आर नॉट. एंड this is the trope of empathy and this is the pitfall जिससे हमें बहुत ज्यादा मोहतात रहने की जरूरत है कि अपनी प्रिविलेज की जगह से. एंड आपस की बात है, आमना तुम मैं साद हम बहुत प्रिविलेज्ड हैं. तो हम नहीं कह सकते कि अगर कोई सफर कर रहा है हमसे ज्यादा तो हम एग्जैक्टली उस लेवल पर हैं. तो एम्पैथी के अंदर, नाउ दैट यू सेड दिस, आई वुड लाइक टू मेक अ पॉइंट कि जब आप किसी की तरफ एम्पैथी शो कर रहे होते हैं तो देयर आर सर्टेन थिंग्स दैट यू आर नॉट सपोज्ड टू से. और अगर आप एक ट्रू एम्पैथ हैं तो आप ये चीजें नहीं बोल सकते. पहली चीज है कि आई नो एग्जैक्टली हाउ यू फील, आई हैव बीन देयर, डन दैट.
और शिफ्टिंग द फोकस टू अच्छा तुम्हारे साथ ये हुआ, होल्ड ऑन लेट मी टेल यू, मेरे साथ भी एग्जैक्टली यही हुआ था. यू नो आई फील लाइक दैट्स अ क्लासिक वे ऑफ हाउ पीपल एड्रेस योर प्रॉब्लम. Okay, somebody sharing their problem with you, or they might be, you know, expressing their pain, and how people respond to that is like, हाँ तुम बिल्कुल सही करी, पता है मेरे साथ क्या हुआ, I went through this, you know, similar situation, so on and so forth. And the point, like connecting to what you're saying, is that that kind of minimizes or invalidates the pain that the other person is trying to express. And you can continue. Sorry, I just wanted to make that point.
It's okay. It's okay. So I completely agree with what you're saying. I do feel कि जो लोग इस तरह behave कर रहे होते हैं वो किसी negative intent से हमेशा नहीं करते हैं. Maybe it is their sense of loneliness that makes them want to connect to other people desperately, and it's not always a sense of loneliness. और जिनको बहुत ज्यादा पीपल प्लीजिंग की आदत होती है, और मैं उनको किसी नेगेटिव सेंस में नहीं दे रही हूँ पीपल प्लीजिंग. अगर आप एक मिडिल चाइल्ड हैं और आपको टेंशन नहीं मिली है घर में जिस तरह आपके बड़े बहन भाइयों को मिली या छोटे बहन भाइयों को मिली, तो ऑब्वियसली आप एक पीपल प्लीजर होंगे. तो इस लेबल के अंदर कोई गुनाह नहीं है, बट इसके अंदर मैनेजमेंट जरूरी है. दूसरी चीज, कोई अपना पेन आपसे शेयर कर रहा हो, आई नो एग्जैक्टली हाउ यू फील बट यू शुड बी पॉजिटिव. मतलब किसी के घर में खाने को रोटी नहीं है और आप उसे पॉजिटिविटी की देख खिला रहे हैं, उसमें प्रॉब्लम ये होता है कि आपको एक गली, एक नुक्कड़ से गुजरना पड़ेगा, यू नो, एक रास्ते से जहाँ पे कूड़ा पड़ा है, जहाँ पे कचरा चल रहा है, आपको उस हेवीनेस से गुजरना पड़ेगा उससे निकलने के लिए. अपने माइंड में आप नहीं निकल सकते. तो जो बहुत ज्यादा पॉजिटिविटी लॉ ऑफ अट्रैक्शन कर रहे होते हैं, नॉट दैट देयर इज अ प्रॉब्लम विद दैट, बट अगेन जिस तरह एम्पैथी को भी बहुत ज्यादा म्यूटिलेट किया जाता है, लॉ ऑफ अट्रैक्शन को भी किया जा सकता है और किया जाता है. बहुत सारे लोग जो कि अपने इमोशंस से कंफर्टेबल नहीं होते, जब वो किसी दूसरे को देख रहे होते हैं अपने एक्सप्रेस करते हुए, तो वो फौरन कहते हैं ओ बी टफ, मूव ऑन, how long are you going to cry about this problem? Without understanding that maybe that person is not ready yet.
So
And
what could
that's
have
the
been a
problem
better
with
response to
empathy. कि
that,
जब
Meher?
आपको लगता है
Sorry, I'm like interrupting you over here. Like, so you're saying कि, for example, जो आप बात कर रहे हो कि हाँ कब तक रहोगे इस चीज़ के अंदर, and the reason कि मैं इस पे ज़्यादा emphasize कर रही हूँ because I feel like that's a common denominator in our society. So what would be a better response? A response
so
that
instead
is
of
full of
saying,
empathy.
be positive, be tough, it could have been worse. Because you're invalidating somebody else's experience when you say these things. Better thing to do is, I know how hard you're working. I know that you're trying your best. I know that you are doing all that you can in your capacity, and I'm here for you. The best thing that you can do is compassionate listening instead of immediately trying to fix their problems. Okay, we are all guilty of it, so it's all right. But it's a reminder जो हम बार बार अपने आप को दे सकते हैं कि instead of trying to fix the problem immediately or put the problem in many tiny neat boxes कि इस चीज का ये, इस चीज का ये, इस चीज का ये कर लो. Sometimes all you need to do is listen to someone with every fiber of your being. और उसमें होता ये है कि जब एक इंसान अपनी बात आपसे कर रहा होता है, बात करते करते ही उसको समझ आ जाता है कि उसको किस तरफ जाना. ग्रोथ पेन को प्रोसेस करना एक प्रोसेस होता है. इट कैन नॉट बी अ स्विच के ऑन या ऑफ. तो थोड़ा टाइम लगता है. तो जो रियल एम्पैथी है, जो कंपैशनेट एम्पैथी है, इज allowing yourself to sit with someone through their pain without wanting to change it immediately. And also, while it's good to feel it, not to completely internalize it. Because अगर therapist या teachers ये करना शुरू कर दें, so they'll be incapacitated, वो अपनी job नहीं कर पाएंगे फिर. तो वो healthy distance कि ये इंसान अपनी एक unique story के साथ एक इंसान है, इसके unique habit patterns है, और मैं but they can never be the same.
So we will talk more about the healthy distance. That's something I want to touch upon as well in a more detailed fashion. Saad, coming back to you, जैसे मेहरावर बात करिए, I feel like a lot of times हमें लोगों को educate करना पड़ता है, कि as she mentioned कि हमारी intentions गलत नहीं होती. A lot of responses that we hear in the society वो conditioning की वजह से भी हैं. So a lot of times people don't realize कि what they're saying indicates lack of empathy. हालांकि उनकी intention खराब नहीं होती. You have written and talked a lot about mental health from an experiential point of view. You've had friends who've gone through that. And I remember you also wrote an article on it. So what's your take on it कि लोगों को कैसे educate किया जा सकता है, to become more empathetic? You can talk from your personal experiences, or perhaps you would like to elaborate on your point of view that you wrote in the article. How can you educate people to be more empathetic?
That's something that I don't know if you can educate people. I think people, I feel like educating people would be impossible on feelings because we all have our lunatic ideas, and then I don't think I think what people need to be understood. Na basic चीज है कि लोगों को they want to say what they want to say and they want to be heard. Just taking a leaf from Mehraavar's book there, empathy, for instance, let's just talk about you mentioned the society. Societal level pe you see where we all stand. There's disparity, there's clear dichotomies, and then there are countries which have been empathetic to each other. हम नहीं है, and that's something that we should come and accept. मैं आज गाड़ी रोड पे लेके जाता हूँ, I have to be very careful about my own car. I should keep my own distance from people. I should be more responsible while driving the car, because I don't know if someone will just cross the line, break the signals, break the law, and I'll get the hit. Similarly, women go through their own experiences of, safeties around the city, around the country. When you have countries like that, or when you live in a country like that, तो फिर जब इस तरह के problems confront होते हैं, there is always lack of empathy. But then we have also examples in Italy where the entire apartment building came around or comes around every evening to sing songs to each other. So I think एक societal fabric के अंदर जब इतनी dichotomies होती हैं और हमारे यहाँ हैं, तो फिर इस तरह के events में वो accentuate हो जाती हैं और I think again I'll keep on going back to this के while we can't be taught, maybe interpersonally you can teach people, what troubles are, what problems are, but we also need to understand that Pakistan has not been a very happy space for last 2 decades. We've gone through war and terrors, we've gone through various forms of violence. Sorry, did some?
Just two decades?
Sorry, sorry, क्या कह रही हो?
You said 2 decades, Saad? 2 decades?
No. It's definitely. I mean, the violence like जो हमारे screens पर है, so which is just there, the sheer bloodshed that has happened, right? Since 2000 से लेके up till now, and then we've suffered the earthquakes and God knows all sorts of that. Obviously, the violence has always been there, but वो अब चूंकि the media is alive and the cameras are there and the social media is there, so I think now it gets more highlighted and more reported more extensively than it did before. So I think कभी-कभी मुझे भी that's what I feel is that इतनी ज़्यादा violence के अंदर से जब कोई मुल्क गुजरता है तो desensitized हो जाते हैं वो शहरी उस मुल्क के. I heard some interesting stories कि while the West probably has seen more deaths happening, but पाकिस्तान में तो norm रहा है. हमारे यहाँ तो 100 बंदा एक दिन में मर जाता है और it's a news bulletin and we have seen deaths. We've seen mutilated bodies. We've seen all of it, haven't we? So maybe over the period of time हमारी empathy एक दूसरे के लिए खत्म इसलिए भी हो गई शायद because we've all gone through so much of our own pain and we're existing in the pain consistently and our memories haven't been pleasant for last few years that I think we've lost the touch with that and I think maybe we need to find some thread because मुझे अभी भी लगता है that Amna has been rightly mentioning when you look around and you said it as well the privilege is also अभी हमारे पास भी privilege है that we can't deny and how much can I step out and go there and really completely imbibe what others are feeling? That's a very tough call. And educating that, I think we are by whatever faith that is, we are being educated. But I don't know, uska adverse effects are maybe of too much of that.
Saad, उससे distance कैसे करे अपने आप को like to maintain a healthy balance since you're talking about impact environment का and what's going around you. It does take a toll on your emotional health, I feel like, and that's like the next point that I want to touch upon. कि उससे फिर अपने आप को distance कैसे करे like how do you do it? कि I see that you monitor social media a lot, you're very active on that. You read up on a lot of things and that's part of your job as well, but how do you keep that balance, that distance, ताकि वो आपकी अपनी emotional health जो है वो इस point तक ना आ जाए कि recover ना हो पाए? So how do you maintain that balance?
I think you can't. I think you can. There is never going to be a healthy balance. I think end of the day, your therapist anyone's therapist would be the go-to person eventually. For instance, I use Twitter quite extensively, and when I was there, so Twitter has a way of like consistently bogging your days down because वहाँ पे some things that you read are often and it's consistent. One thing that I've understood is Pakistan में consistently हर जगह कुछ ना कुछ violence of some sort हो रहा है, whether that's against women, whether that's against activists. So and not to feel is also I feel like you're crying, you're turning the other cheek. So it's something that I feel like in my personal experience I've never been able to balance it out. I think I've been able to mitigate it with some other thing.
How do you mitigate it? For the benefit
I think at
of our
times
audience.
people quit social media and at times people just say कि नहीं अब मुझसे नहीं हो रहा and then they go back to their rooms or their Netflixes or their friends and they're like bus. So I think unplugging yourself because हम बातें बहुत कर सकते हैं about how it's important to maintain a healthy diet and then come to this and maybe find your centers and breathe in a particular way so that you can find redemption. But I feel like at times you just need to be like you are a person and you need to save yourself right now for certain time, replenish yourself and come back. Skilly, I think maybe you need to disconnect. So for me, it has been plenty of times it's been about disconnecting myself from the news, from the consistency of all that's going on. Again, it's an ostrich policy, maybe having my head in the sand, maybe, but it is that, and it goes on to just show that as a human, there's so much so I can do, and so much so I can deal with myself.
So I think what you're saying is that the first thing that we need to do is be honest with ourselves, like acknowledge what we're experiencing and feeling and not run away from that. So if you're not feeling okay with something, accept and address that you're not feeling okay about it. And it's an important that you mentioned disconnect. I remember the first time I heard the idea of having a mental health leave was when I was working in Cambodia. हमारी US based non-profit थी. So our executive director was coming down and she was meeting all the volunteers who were working to there. And she emphasized on that. She was like, if you need to take a mental health leave, you're entitled to that. 1 month ke andar, this is how much is required. And that was, an eye-opener for me. I was like, okay, somebody actually using those words, mental health, in a positive way, and also advocating, it's important to disconnect. It's important to take care of your mental health as well. So that was the first time that I saw that and experienced that as part of an organization policy as well. So I don't think that's an ostrich approach. I feel like as human beings, we also need to take care of our mental health, emotion health, and everyone finds a different way to go about it. I feel like that's my take on it. Mehraavar, what do you have to say about that? Emotional distance कैसे करें हम? Since you talked about that कि it does take a toll, तो क्या करें उसके बारे में?
I feel like there are a lot of things you can do to strike a balance and to recuperate. So I will talk about the things that I did initially. और फिर generally भी क्या हो सकती है उसके बारे में बात करूंगी. So the first thing I did was that I made a mantra for myself, which was कि मुझे kindness क्या और compassion का करण जौहर नहीं बनना, which means कि जिन लोगों के पास already बहुत है, and I remember that I made friends with someone and that person said to me that, whatever you do, whatever spiritual practices you are doing, I'm not just interested in them, I'm actively seeking to practice them. So I was like, yay, I found a bud who's interested in the same things that I am. But it took a week for that person to just go back to that old mindset, or that old habitual pattern, जहाँ पे she would be listening to sad music और हाँ यही जिंदगी की reality है. So I was like, okay, so she felt like she wanted to be out of whatever personal hell that she was suffering in, but now she wants to go back to it. So why I'm giving you this example is because that was the incident that made me realize that I don't want to be the Karan Johar of compassion. कि जिनके पास दुनिया की सारी resources हैं, जिनके पास दुनिया के सारे tools हैं, और वो फिर भी उसको use नहीं करना चाह रहे. So I'm not going to ask people to take a step back and fight their battles for them. I felt that going to SOS, going to different organizations where I wasn't being charitable. In fact, मैं तो अपनी मस्ती के लिए जाती थी, where I can go and I can play board and card games with them, where I can do storytelling sessions with them, where I can play group games with those kids. I was showing up for somebody else while also nourishing what I need in a situation. So ये चीज कुछ 10-15 सालों से पेरेंट चाइल्ड रिलेशनशिप में भी आना शुरू हुई है, और टीचर स्टूडेंट रिलेशनशिप में आना शुरू हुई है कि एक इंसान 100% रिसीवर नहीं होता और एक इंसान 100% गिवर नहीं होता. सो टीचर्स को भी अपनी वल्नरेबिलिटी को थोड़ा सामने लाना जरूरी है कि students are teaching them and kids are teaching parents along the way. ये वाली जो चीज है ना कि मुझे पता है तुम्हारे लिए क्या अच्छा है and I know what's best for you, और अपनी vulnerability को छुपाना, I think ये सबसे नुकसानदेह चीज है जो हम कर सकते हैं. Coming back to empathy के दौरान क्या tools है? पहली चीज तो you have to have your own personal mantra. I feel like mine is I will not be the Karan Johar of empathy. दूसरी चीज जो हम कर सकते हैं, obviously going to a therapist, being part of a support group, knowing who are the people that are a part of your inner tribe. आपके पास भी तो कोई जगह होनी चाहिए ना जाने के लिए, और ये सिर्फ एक फैसिलिटी आपने दूसरों को तो नहीं देनी है. जर्नलिंग इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, एंड बिकॉज आई एम स्पिरिचुअल तो मेरी एक पर्सनल प्रैक्टिस है कि एप्सम सॉल्ट या जो लाहौरी नमक होता है उसको लेके lukewarm water के साथ just dip your feet in it, and then imagine that if all the negativity and all the distress that you've experienced during the day is leaving your body. So guided imagery या जो guided meditation होती है, that is scientifically shown कि आपका जो mental shift होता है वो आपके neurons को और आपकी empathy को किस तरह affect कर रहा है. So I would say कि everyone who has a lot of empathy, a lot of compare कि उनके लिए क्या पैटर्न है या उनके लिए क्या टूल्स काम करते हैं. For a lot of people it can be art, for others it can be music, but what is important is that you find out your own method, you find out what works for you, and something works for everyone. ऐसा नहीं है कि किसी के लिए कोई भी चीज काम नहीं करती है, but इस बात को मैं कंक्लूड करना चाहूंगी ये कहने के लिए कि अगर हमें एम्पैथी के बेस्ट चैंपियंस देखते हैं, एम्पैथी के एंजल्स देखते हैं, एम्पैथी के हीरोज देखते हैं, तो अभी जो हेल्थ केयर सिस्टम है पूरा, be it nurses, be it doctors, anyone, even the janitor that's in the hospital, उनसे ज्यादा एम्पैथी अभी कोई भी शो नहीं कर रहा है, या जो ग्रोसरी सेल कर रहे हैं. बट हाउ आर दे डूइंग इट? बाय वेयरिंग प्रोटेक्टिव गियर. ऐसे ही नहीं जा रहे कि हमें एम्पैथी है और हमें आपसे हमदर्दी है तो चलो भाई सब छोड़ो. नहीं, दे आर प्रोटेक्टिंग देयर सिस्टम while showing up for you, and this is all you need to know about empathy, to know where the boundaries are for you, क्योंकि हर किसी की पर्सनल बाउंड्रीज अलग होंगी. और बाउंड्रीज आप कैसे फिगर आउट करते हैं? बाय बीइंग ऑनेस्ट विद योरसेल्फ एंड पीपल अराउंड यू. अगर आपको लोग अपने प्रॉब्लम से ओवरवेलम कर रहे हैं, सो इट्स इंपॉर्टेंट टू से दैट राइट नाउ आई एम नॉट इन
Meher, can you repeat the last point, because I feel like थोड़ा इंटरनेट बीच में आपका जो है वो डिस्कनेक्ट हो गया था. Can you repeat your last point?
But I will call you back. It's important to say that कि right now
Mehraavar, can you hear us?
My last point was कि सबसे ज्यादा जरूरी है अपने आप को, अगर आपके अंदर एम्पैथी और सेंसिटिविटी ज्यादा है, इज बाउंड्री. You hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but I feel like कि आपका इंटरनेट थोड़ा सा जो है मसला कर रहा है. Unfortunately, आज I think कि सबका इंटरनेट थोड़ा सा इशू हो रहा था. We can see you now, and I think we can hear you better.
Okay, great. It's really windy today.
Yes, yes, I can hear that
so
as well.
I was saying the most important tool you need is setting your boundaries and being honest about your boundaries. अगर आपके पास आपको जैसे मुझे डेली बेसिस पे 5-6-7 कॉल्स आती हैं इन दिनों, whether it's my sister or friends, और अक्सर तो दोस्तों के दोस्त के भी कॉल्स आते हैं कि who are going through something and they just want to talk about it. तो काफी बार ऐसा होता है कि मुझे उनको बताना पड़ता है that right now I'm not in that space where I can be there, but when I am available I'll call you back. ये जाहिर आप हमेशा नहीं कर सकते, but बाउंड्री सेट करना बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है. तो लोग बाउंड्री सेट नहीं करते, वो ही एम्पैथी बर्नआउट को एक्सपीरियंस करते हैं. और इसका एम्पैथी से इतना ताल्लुक नहीं है जितना जनरली एनर्जी की कंजम्पशन. मतलब अगर आप दिन में काम किए and you're not resting, you're not eating, you're not hydrating yourself, so how would your body react to it? Empathy का भी सेम ही है कि if you're just showing up for others and you're not taking a time out, you will burn out, and then you'll start to resent people, and you're not having those boundaries. So I think in any relationship, boundaries are the most important thing you can do.
And I think one thing I would like to, since we're almost towards the end, one thing I would like to add, and then I'll take closing comments from both of you. जो आप बात कर रहे थे मेहरावर, I would also like to add कि empathy shaming भी हमारे यहाँ पे बहुत common है. Like people who practice empathy or people who are there for their friends, their family members. एंड में लोग आके उन्हीं को कहेंगे जी कि हाँ तुम्हें किसने कहा था कि इतना अच्छा उनके साथ करो, तुम्हें किसने कहा था to go above and beyond to do that for this other person. So what's your take on empathy shaming? And that's going to be our last point, फिर हम लोग wrap up करेंगे.
Amna?
Yes.
If you could also look at a comment that there's a question asked from Mehraavar as well on Facebook.
Sure. Mehraavar, आप continue करो and I'll check the comment.
Okay. इसका बहुत ही छोटा जवाब है, which is कि जो लोग ये बात कर रहे हैं वो lack of empathy practice कर रहे हैं आपके साथ. Because when somebody goes through pain, the first thing you need to say to them is, you don't deserve to be treated like this. I know you went in with the best of your intentions. I know you went in with all of your heart, and I wish this had not happened to you. This is the first thing you need to say. क्योंकि जब आपको किसी चीज में धोखा होगा तो आप भी ये सुनना चाहेंगे. जब आपको किसी चीज में धोखा होगा या आपसे कोई गलती होगी तो आप भी यही सुनना चाहेंगे that I know that you were trying your best. तो इसीलिए एम्पैथी इतनी जरूरी है कि इंस्टेड अपने आप को दूसरे प्रॉब्लम से, इमोशन से डिस्टेंस के विक्टिम ब्लेमिंग शुरू कर दें. एम्पैथी का बेस्ट तरीका यही है कि आप वो बोले जो आप probably सुनना चाहते हैं. I know that you're trying your best.
Mehraavar, we have a question for you. Sana Hussain said that, Meher, I love your brain. I'd like to probe a little. Can one person relate to more than one of the 5 sorts of empathies you defined earlier? Do they blur over or are there definitive boundaries? So what she's saying is कि जो आपने initial 5 forms हमें बताए थे of exercising empathy. So what she's saying is कि do they are the lines blurred sometimes, or are there other ways of how you can exercise empathy as well? And she's complimenting your brain, so I thought I'll add that as well.
Thank you so much. And thanks for asking that question. Like intelligence, empathy की जो types है वो एक दूसरे के साथ interrelated होती हैं. एक इंसान जिसकी spatial intelligence है उसके अंदर mathematical intelligence होती है, या किसी के अंदर अगर intrapersonal है, which is intelligence towards self, towards the limitations of your body, or intelligence towards how much you can push your body, the limitless or the limitations. ये होती है इंट्रापर्सनल. तो अगर एक इंसान की इंट्रापर्सनल इंटेलिजेंस है और वो एक एथलीट है या डांसर है तो 100% उसकी मैथमेटिकल इंटेलिजेंस भी होगी. या अगर जो ऑडिटरी इंटेलिजेंस होती है, जो साउंड की होती है, जो कंपोजर्स, रैपर्स, म्यूजिशियंस में होती है, तो अगर उनमें वो इंटेलिजेंस है तो उनके साथ उनके पास ऑटोमेटिकली मैथमेटिकल भी है, क्योंकि म्यूजिक इज मैथ. तो ये आप पांचों आपके अंदर ये हो सकती हैं एम्पैथी की टाइप्स, और भी एम्पैथी की टाइप्स होती हैं, लेकिन हाँ ये पांचों ब्लर हो जाती हैं और ये पांचों आपके अंदर हो सकती हैं. But the ones that you need to practice most and most in yourself, compassion, empathy, and
Meher, we lost you there for a minute. Can you repeat the last part where you were talking about compassion, empathy?
It is so bad.
I know, it's really
sorry,
windy, Andhi aa rahi hai, and I think the internet is also getting disrupted because of that.
Yeah. So the last जो मैंने बात कही थी वो यही कही थी कि इंटेलिजेंस की भी कोई डिफाइंड लाइंस नहीं होती. People do have multiples of intelligence and people do have multiple kinds of empathy as well.
Okay. So we're going to wrap up this session because काफी लोगों ने इफ्तार की तैयारी करनी होगी और आज पहला रोजा है. Thank you, both of you, for such an enriching session. But before we go, any parting comments that you have, any closing comments? Yes, Meher, I saw your finger up there. Yes.
I feel like a student. Nahi, Saad, I want you to go first because I want to do a very short one or maybe 30-40 seconds exercise with everyone. But before we do that, this is one of the tools of empathy.
ठीक है साद, how about you share your closing comments with us, और फिर उसके बाद हम मेहर के एक्सरसाइज पे हम सेशन को एंड करेंगे. I'm really scared. It's getting very windy.
Yes. It's apparently
trees are flying. I can see things flying outside my window.
Just hold on to your wherever you're sitting.
Yeah.
You need to end the session.
Yes.
I think the last comments for me, I think these are also times of introspection for all of us. These are also times where a lot of things that we had taken for granted or we had assumed would always be there are not there anymore. So, it is also time where, a lot of people have experienced isolation. A lot of people have experienced ostracization. A lot of people have been shunned by society. अभी बड़े draconian laws लगते हैं हमें, being put inside our homes and we can't step out. These are also very dangerous times in terms of freedom of expression and freedom of movement.
Yeah.
So maybe these are times to reflect upon so many things. So many of people who go through mental health issues, or so many activists who've been picked up and put in jail cells for crimes they haven't committed. For so many parts of this country where जो आज हमें benefits हैं उनको अरसे से नहीं है. So many parts of this country goes through curfews and various forms of abuse by the authorities. So I think it's very important for us to all realize कि आज जो हम experience कर रहे हैं, maybe शायद we're experiencing it collectively, but doesn't mean that people haven't experienced what we're experiencing today in their own lives. So I think it's important that that's where the empathy should come from, what it feels like.
Thank you for sharing that, Saad. And Mehraavar, we're going to end with the little exercise that you had for us, and I'm really excited.
Okay. So before the exercise, just one thing. Every time I ask people to show up for themselves and be there for themselves, they'd always say that I don't have the time, काम पे जाना है. आप कोई excuses नहीं है बेटा, आप घर पे बैठे हैं, थोड़ा सा अपने लिए time निकालें, बैठे ही हैं, और अगर आप PUBG पे बैठे हुए हैं 6 घंटे के लिए, तो उसमें से 15 मिनट अपने लिए do it. If you are your priority, you will do it. क्योंकि वो जो बचपन से एग्जाम्पल हमें दिया है कि एक सूखा दरख्त जिसके ऊपर ना पत्ते हो, ना फल हो, ना फूल हो, वो किसी और को नरिश नहीं कर सकता. सो यू नीड टू नरिश योरसेल्फ फर्स्ट. सो आई नो, मैं नहीं कहूंगी कि कोविड की पॉजिटिविटी देखें, क्या पॉजिटिव देखें, लेकिन कोविड के अंदर अपने एक्शंस की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी लेना जरूरी है. एंड माय नेट इज अगेन अनस्टेबल. कैन यू गाइज हियर मी? Okay, so the exercise is very, very short. I want everybody to close their eyes. Saad, okay. Close your eyes and just think of somebody that you love a lot, but you are in a caretaker's position. Whether it's your child or आपका छोटा बहन भाई हो, या आपके माँ बाप बहुत ज्यादा जो ज़ईफ हों, या आपका कोई दोस्त जो कि ज्यादा वल्नरेबल पोजीशन में हो. किसी भी इंसान को आप इमेजिन करें. और मैं बाकियों से तो नहीं पूछ सकती, बट मैं साद और आमना से पूछूंगी कि आपके माइंड्स आई में किसी की इमेज आ रही है?
Yes.
Okay. So focus on that person, and while focusing on that person, just say to yourself and listen to these words carefully, that just like this person that I love so deeply, I too am seeking kindness in my life. Just like this person that I'm looking at, I too am trying to avoid paralyzing suffering. Just like this person, I too get overwhelmed I do get sad. I do experience despair and I get very self-critical. Just like this person, I deserve to have my needs met. Just like this person, I'm trying to learn something in life. I'm trying to do the best that I can. Just like this person, I'm willing to show up for myself. And I'll repeat that just like this person, I'm willing to show up for myself. Just like this person, I do deserve love and acceptance. That's it. You can open your eyes now.
Oh, Saad shut off his video while he had his eyes closed. That's not fair.
Oh, no, sorry, I didn't realize my eyes were closed and my phone's battery went to 10%.
No, that felt very refreshing, Mehraavar. Thank you so much for that.
एंड मैं चाहूंगी कि हम एम्पैथी के ऊपर दोबारा जब वर्कशॉप करें या दोबारा कोई डिस्कशन करें तो मैं रोमांटिक रिलेशनशिप्स के बारे में या इंटीमेट रिलेशनशिप्स के बारे में बात करना चाहूंगी.
That's one announcement that I wanted to make. This was just a small video, a small effort that we wanted to put out there. We'll be coming up with separate workshops जो कि अलग से announce होंगी, and we'll have different resource persons for those. We'll obviously be charging nominal fee for that ताकि जो resource persons हम उनको भी pay कर सकें for their time and effort. So Mehraavar would be coming back with us as one of the resource persons for a workshop. उसको हम लोग advertise करेंगे हमारे page के ऊपर. Saad will also be conducting and facilitating his own workshop. कुछ workshops में लेकर आऊंगे, and then we have other people in the pipeline जो हमारे resource persons हैं, and then all of them would be conducting different workshops. So please follow Parvaz-e-Takhayyul, and thank you so much for your time, Mehraavar and Saad. And I know कि इफ्तार का time करीब आ रहा है, and it's getting crazy out there. Once again, thank you for your thoughts. I love your brains, both of you, equally. And I feel that this is a topic that wasn't really easy to talk about because वैसे तो bookish form में हमें empathy की definition मिल जाती है, but practically, realistically speaking, उसको हम कैसे practice करते हैं, उसकी manifestations क्या हैं, उसके challenges क्या हैं. I feel like a very important aspect that we touched upon is the challenges that we face empathy के साथ, because हमेशा उसको एक positive connotation में discuss किया जाता है. Of course उसकी positive connotation है, but yet again जब भी आप किसी emotional reciprocity की equation के अंदर होते हैं तो that means कि आप लोग it takes a toll on your emotional health as well. So I think it was important to talk about that. Having said that, thank you so much both of you, and thank you for this enriching session.
Thank you, Amna. It's been a privilege just being here.
Let's do this again.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye everyone. See you soon.
Be safe. Everyone who's listening in as well, I think that's just to wish them, being safe and stay home.
Yes.
And stay tuned, because I think that's the idea of doing these regular sessions, that we don't want to have some grand webinars. We just want to talk about simple issues. Maybe those who heard आज के session में, they can pose any questions, any topics that they want us to discuss. Maybe they can leave a comment, and then we can also take that.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. Yeah. Anything you would like to say, Mehraavar, before I close the session?
I was just about to say the same thing, that if anyone has any question or they want us to talk about something specific, तो वो परवाज़-ए-तखय्युल के पेज पे या आपको या मुझे मैसेज कर सकते हैं. And जो हमारा next session होगा उसके अंदर we will have a lot more exercises and a lot more things to do. मतलब I will share practical tools in the next session that we do. That's it.
Okay, everyone, stay safe. Love you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.